Jake Martinez wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the message on his screen. His boss wanted to see him right away. That was never a good sign. He put down his tools and walked through the corridors of the Endeavor, wondering what he had done wrong this time. The ship had been docked at Crossroads Haven for 3 weeks now. The station was huge, floating in space between human territory and the Velkari Empire. Jake had never seen a Velkari up close before. They were warriors, everyone knew that. Tall, strong, and proud. They didn't talk much to humans, and humans didn't push for conversation. When Jake reached the office, his boss looked nervous. Captain Morris stood there too, which made Jake even more worried. Important people only showed up when something big was happening. "Martinez, we have a special job for you," his boss said. "The Velkari delegation needs an armor repair. Their warrior damaged her gear in a fight with some pirates last week." Jake nodded slowly. "Okay, so why me?" "Their technicians don't have the right tools. They asked for our best armor specialist." His boss paused. "That's you. The Velkari are letting a human touch their armor?" Jake couldn't hide his surprise. Everyone knew the Velkari treated their armor like it was sacred. They never let outsiders near it. Captain Morris stepped forward. "They're not happy about it, but they need the repair done right. Their commander is supposed to attend some important meetings next week. She can't do that with broken armor. It would be an insult to everyone involved." Jake thought about it. This could go very wrong. If he messed up, it might cause problems between humans and the Velkari. But he was good at his job. His grandfather had taught him well. "When do they want me?" 2 hours. Repair Bay 7. It's been cleared for your use." Jake spent those 2 hours gathering his tools and researching what he could about Velkari armor. There wasn't much information available. The Velkari kept their technology private. He would have to figure things out as he went along. When he arrived at the repair bay, she was already there. Commander Thrinna stood near the center of the room, and Jake stopped in his tracks. She was huge, at least 7 feet tall. Her skin had a blue-silver color that seemed to shift in the light. Her eyes were amber, bright, and sharp, watching him like a hawk watches a mouse. She wore her armor, and even damaged, it was beautiful. The metal had patterns carved into it, designs that probably meant something important to her people. "You are the human technician?" Her voice was deep and strong. "Yes, ma'am." "Jake Martinez. I'm here to fix your armor." She didn't move. Her hand rested near the weapon on her belt. Jake understood. She didn't trust him. He didn't blame her. This was probably as uncomfortable for her as it was for him. "May I take a look at the damage?" he asked, keeping his voice calm and professional. Thrinna turned slightly, showing him her left side. The armor plates there were cracked and bent. Some of the inner workings were exposed. Jake could see where energy burns had melted through the outer layer. It must have been a serious fight. He stepped closer slowly, making sure she could see everything he was doing. He pulled out a small scanner and held it up. "I need to scan the damage. It won't hurt or change anything. It just helps me see what needs to be fixed." She gave a short nod. Jake ran the scanner over the damaged area. The readings showed up on his portable screen. It was worse than it looked. The damage went deep into the armor systems. This would take hours of careful work. "I can fix this," he said, "but I'll need to remove some of the plates and work on the inside. It's going to take time, maybe 4 or 5 hours." "How long have you worked with armor?" Thrinna asked. 10 years. "My grandfather was a master craftsman. He taught me everything he knew. I've worked on dozens of different types of armor from different worlds, but never Velkari armor." "No, ma'am, never Velkari armor. But metal is metal, and energy systems follow the same basic rules everywhere. I'll treat your armor with respect. I promise you that." Something in her eyes changed slightly. Maybe she believed him. Maybe she just had no choice. "Begin." Jake set up his workstation and started the careful process of removing the damaged plates. His hands moved with practiced skill. Each piece he removed, he set aside gently. He noticed Thrinna watching his every move. She never relaxed, never looked away. "This is beautiful work," Jake said as he examined one of the plates. "Whoever made this knew what they were doing. See these patterns? They're not just decoration. They help distribute impact force across the whole surface." Thrinna seemed surprised. "You understand this?" "My grandfather always said that good craftsmanship tells a story. Every piece has a reason for being the way it is. Your armor tells me that your people value both strength and artistry." For the first time, Thrinna's stern expression softened just a little. The armor is made during our coming-of-age ceremony. It grows with us through our lives. Jake nodded, understanding now why this was so important to her. This wasn't just equipment. This was part of her history, her identity. He worked even more carefully, treating each piece like the treasure it was. The hours passed. Jake worked steadily, explaining what he was doing as he went. He replaced damaged power conduits, straightened bent plates, and reinforced weak points. Thrina asked questions sometimes. He answered them honestly, showing her his process. At one point, Jake ran his fingers along a section of the armor, feeling for tiny cracks that his scanner might have missed. It was something his grandfather had taught him. Sometimes your hands could find problems that machines couldn't. His touch was gentle, careful, almost tender. Thrina made a small sound, something between surprise and something else Jake couldn't identify. He looked up at her. "Did I hurt you?" "No." She looked away quickly. "Continue your work." Jake finished as the station's artificial night cycle began. The armor looked better than it probably had in years. He had fixed everything and improved some of the systems. "All done. Want to test it?" Thrina moved, testing the armor's flexibility. She activated various systems, checking displays that appeared on her wrist panel. Everything worked perfectly. She turned to Jake, and for a moment he thought he saw respect in those amber eyes. "You have skill, human." "Thank you, Commander." She left without another word, but Jake noticed something as she walked away. She touched the place where his hands had worked just briefly, as if checking to make sure it was real. Jake packed up his tools, tired but satisfied. It had been a good day's work. He didn't know that everything in his life had just changed. 3 days passed quietly. Jake went back to his normal work, fixing equipment and maintaining the ship's systems. He thought about Commander Thrina sometimes, wondering if she was satisfied with the repair. But he didn't expect to see her again. She was important, busy with diplomatic meetings and warrior duties. He was just a mechanic. Then the message came. Commander Thrina requested him specifically for maintenance on her armor. Jake stared at the screen, confused. The armor was fine. He had fixed everything. Why would she need maintenance already? His boss seemed just as puzzled. Maybe she wants to make sure everything is working right. These diplomatic meetings are important. Just go and check whatever she needs. Jake gathered his tools and headed to the coordinates she had sent. This time it wasn't a repair bay. It was a private training facility that the Velkari had rented on the station. When the door opened, Jake saw Thrina in the middle of the room, moving through combat drills. She was incredible to watch. Despite the armor's weight, she moved like water, flowing from one position to another. She spun, kicked, and struck at invisible enemies with deadly precision. The armor didn't slow her down at all. It was like a second skin. She noticed him and stopped. "Martinez, you are here." "Yes, ma'am." "You requested maintenance?" "Yes, come." She walked to a bench at the side of the room and began removing some of her armor's outer plates. "I want you to check the systems. Make sure everything functions as it should." Jake set down his tools and began his examination. Everything looked perfect. The repairs were holding strong. All systems showed green on his scanner. He said as much. "Check again," Thrina said. "I want to be certain." So Jake checked again, more carefully this time. He ran his hands over the armor, feeling for any problems. Still nothing. He looked up at her, confused. "Commander, everything is perfect." "Better than perfect, actually. Is something wrong that I'm not seeing?" Thrina was quiet for a moment. "Tell me about your training. How did you learn this skill?" Jake sat back, surprised by the question. "My grandfather, he had a small shop in Denver, back on Earth. He fixed everything from old cars to spacecraft parts. He used to say that every object has a soul, a purpose. You have to understand that purpose to fix it properly. This is not common among human technicians. Not really. Most people just follow the manual, replace broken parts, move on to the next job. My grandfather taught me different. He said you have to respect what you're working on, understand its history." Thrina's amber eyes studied him carefully. "This is why your touch is different." "My touch?" "When you worked on my armor before, you treated it with reverence. Not like equipment, like something alive." Jake felt his face get warm. "I guess that's how my grandfather taught me. Your armor is special. Anyone can see that. It deserves respect. Among my people, armor is sacred," Thrina said slowly. "It is made for us when we become adults. We add to it after each battle, each victory. Every mark tells a story. Every repair is part of our history. I understand. That makes sense. The ones who maintain our armor are called keepers. They are usually family members or bonded mates. It is a position of great trust. To let an outsider touch our armor is almost unthinkable. Jake started to understand why she had been so uncomfortable during that first repair. He had been touching something deeply personal to her, something sacred to her people. I'm sorry if I was disrespectful. I didn't know. You were not disrespectful. That is why this is confusing. Thrinna looked away, and for the first time she seemed uncertain. You touched my armor like a keeper would, with care and understanding. No outsider has ever done this. Jake didn't know what to say. He went back to checking the armor, giving them both time to think. As he worked, Thrinna began asking more questions. She wanted to know about Earth, about his life before space, about human customs and culture. He told her about growing up in Denver, about learning his trade, about the day he decided to leave Earth and see what else was out there. He talked about missing simple things like rain and fresh bread and his mother's cooking. Thrinna listened to everything, asking questions that showed she was really interested. In return, she told him about Velkara Prime, her home world. She described red skies and vast training grounds where young warriors learned to fight. She talked about the pride her family felt when she earned her armor, and the weight of expectation that came with being a commander. Do you ever wish you were just a regular soldier? Jake asked. Without all the responsibility? Thrinna considered this. Sometimes. But we do not choose our path based on ease. We choose it based on honor and duty. That sounds lonely. It can be. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. But a warrior must be strong. We cannot show weakness. Jake had to reach a component that was hard to access. Commander, could you lean forward a bit? She did. As Jake worked, his hand brushed against her back just below where the armor ended. The contact was brief, accidental, but both of them froze. Her skin was warm, warmer than human skin. Jake felt a strange electricity from that simple touch. Sorry, he said quickly, pulling his hand back. Thrinna said nothing. She stayed very still. Jake could see her breathing had changed, faster now. He finished the work quickly, trying to ignore the tension in the room. When he was done, he packed his tools in silence. Thrinna watched him, her face showing no emotion, but something in her eyes was different. Intense. Your hands carry honor, she said in her own language, then translated. It is something we say to those we trust deeply. Jake didn't know what to say to that. Thank you, Commander. If you need anything else, just send me a message. He left quickly, his heart beating fast. Something had happened in that room. Something neither of them had planned. As he walked back to his quarters, Jake couldn't stop thinking about that brief touch, about the way she had looked at him. Back in the training facility, Thrinna sat alone, touching the spot where Jake's hand had been. Her second-in-command, Kreth, entered and saw her expression. He knew that look. He had seen it before in young Velkari who had found their mates. Commander, this is dangerous, he said quietly. Thrinna knew he was right, but knowing something was dangerous and being able to stop it were two very different things. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake saw Thrinna 6 more times. Each time she found a reason to call him. A loose connection here, a calibration check there. Jake knew the armor didn't need this much attention. He had built it too well for that. But he kept coming when she called. People were starting to notice. Jake heard whispers in the hallways. Some humans thought it was funny that a Velkari commander wanted so much attention from a human mechanic. Others worried it might cause problems. The Velkari delegation noticed too. Jake could see them watching whenever he went to meet Thrinna. Jake spent his free time learning everything he could about Velkari culture. He read reports, watched videos, and talked to anyone who knew anything about them. He learned that the Velkari valued honor above all else. They controlled their emotions strictly. What humans might see as coldness was actually deep discipline. The next time he met Thrinna, he surprised her by greeting her with a proper Velkari salute. He used the correct words in her language, the formal greeting for a respected commander. Her eyes widened slightly. You have been studying, she said. I wanted to understand your people better. I should have done it before. Why? Jake wasn't sure how to answer that. Because it's important. Because you're important. Something flickered in Thrinna's eyes. She gestured to her armor. Today I need you to check the power distribution system. As Jake worked, their conversation became more personal than ever before. Thrinna asked about his family, his dreams, the things that made him happy. Jake found himself telling her things he hadn't told anyone in years. About how he sometimes felt lost in space so far from home. About how he wondered if fixing things for other people was enough of a purpose. "You give others the tools to do their duty," Thrinna said. "That is not a small thing. A warrior is only as good as their equipment. You make warriors better. You make them safer. This is honorable work." Jake had never thought of it that way. "Thank you. That means a lot." Thrinna's expression softened. Not much, but Jake was learning to read the small changes in her face. "My people would say you are a keeper. One who maintains not just armor, but the warrior who wears it. Is that a good thing?" "It is a sacred thing. Keepers are chosen carefully. They must understand the warrior completely. They must care for both the armor and the person inside it." Jake looked up at her. "Do you think I understand you? More than anyone else in this station? More than anyone has in a long time." The moment stretched between them. Jake wanted to say something, but he didn't know what. Instead, he went back to work, his hands moving carefully over her armor. Then he saw it, a hairline crack in a critical support structure, hidden deep in the armor's frame. It was old damage, poorly repaired. The kind of thing that could fail suddenly under stress. In battle, this could kill her. "Commander, you need to take off your armor." "What?" "This crack. It's bad, really bad. I need to replace the entire component. You can't wear the armor while I do it." Thrinna hesitated. Jake could see the conflict in her face. Velkhari warriors didn't remove their armor around others. It was too vulnerable, too intimate. But she trusted him. She had been trusting him more and more each time they met. "No one can see," she said finally. "We can use a private facility, just you and me. You would do this? You understand what you are asking?" Jake understood more than she knew. He had learned enough to know that asking her to remove her armor in his presence was significant. But her life was more important than customs. "I understand. And I know this needs to be done. I won't let you go into danger with damaged armor." Thrinna looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Arrange it." 2 days later, Jake entered a secured maintenance room. Thrinna was already there, standing without her armor. She wore only a thin black undersuit that the Velkhari used for comfort. Without her armor, she looked different. Still tall and powerful, but somehow more real, more present. Jake tried to focus on his work. He had fabricated a replacement component, matching the original design but stronger. As he worked on installing it, he explained every step to Thrinna. She watched him closely, sometimes asking questions, sometimes just observing in silence. Hours passed. The work was delicate and slow. During that time, they talked more openly than ever before. Thrinna told him things she had never told anyone. About the pressure of command, about the loneliness of always having to be strong, about how she sometimes wondered what her life would have been like if she had been born as something other than a warrior. "I never feel like I can just be myself," she said quietly. "Always I must be the commander, the example, the symbol. That sounds exhausting. It is. But it is my duty." Jake looked up from his work. "Does it ever get to be too much?" "Sometimes. But a warrior does not complain. Maybe a warrior should. Maybe it's okay to admit when things are hard." Thrinna was quiet for a moment. "This is a human way of thinking." "Maybe, but humans aren't weak just because we admit our feelings. Sometimes it takes more strength to be honest about our struggles." "You are strange, Jake Martinez. You touch armor like a keeper, speak wisdom like an elder, and treat a Velkhari commander like she is just a person. You are just a person. An impressive person, a strong person, but still a person. No one has ever said this to me before. Then maybe no one has really seen you before." Thrinna reached out and touched his shoulder. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact. Her hand was warm and strong. "I have never felt comfortable with anyone the way I feel with you." "This confuses me." Jake's heart beat faster. "It confuses me too. In my culture, the keeper of a warrior's armor is a position of deepest trust. Often it is a mate, a life partner. By allowing you to continue this work, I have been making a statement." "What kind of statement?" "That you are important to me, that I trust you with my life." Jake set down his tools. "Thrinna, I need to be honest with you. I think about you all the time. When I work on your armor, it doesn't feel like just a job anymore. I care about you, not just as a customer, but as a person." "This feeling is mutual," she said softly. "But it is complicated." "I know. Different species, different cultures, your position, my position. There are 1,000 reasons why this is a bad idea. Yes. She moved closer, and yet I cannot stop. When you touch my armor, when you touch me, I feel seen in a way I have never felt before. How can I ignore this? I don't know. I don't have the answers. Neither do I. She looked at her armor standing on its maintenance rack. But I know that when I put that armor back on, it will feel different. Because you have touched it. Because you care for it and care for me. That cannot be undone now. Jake finished the repair in silence. When Thrinna put her armor back on, something had changed between them. The armor was no longer a barrier. It was a connection, something intimate they shared. As Jake packed his tools, Thrinna spoke quietly. Whatever happens next, know that you have given me something precious. You have made me feel human. You mean Velkari? No, I mean human. Vulnerable and real and alive. Thank you for that. Jake left with more questions than answers. But he knew one thing for certain. There was no going back now. Whatever this was between them, it had grown beyond his control. The alarm woke Jake from a deep sleep. Red lights flashed in his quarters. The station's emergency system screamed warnings through the speakers. Attack, breach, all personnel to defensive positions. Jake jumped out of bed and pulled on his clothes. His mind raced. Who would attack Crossroads Haven? The station was neutral territory, protected by treaties between a dozen different species. Attacking it would start a war. He grabbed his toolkit out of habit and ran into the corridor. People rushed everywhere, some heading to defensive positions, others trying to reach the evacuation shuttles. Through the chaos, Jake heard someone shout that it was Velkari attacking Velkari. A civil war had come to the station. Jake's first thought was of Thrinna. Where was she? Was she safe? He pushed through the crowd, trying to reach the Velkari section of the station. Security tried to stop him, but he slipped past in the confusion. The sounds of fighting grew louder as he got closer. Energy weapons fired. Metal clanged against metal. People screamed. Jake used his knowledge of the station's maintenance tunnels to get around the main battle. He emerged near the diplomatic quarters where Thrinna had been staying. The scene was chaos. A group of Velkari warriors in black armor fought against Thrinna's forces. Jake recognized Thrinna immediately, even in the middle of battle. She moved like death itself, her armor flashing as she defended a doorway. Behind her, Jake could see the human and Velkari ambassadors trapped. Jake watched as one of Thrinna's warriors fell. Then another. They were outnumbered badly. The attackers were pushing forward, and Thrinna couldn't hold them all back alone. He had no military training. He wasn't a fighter, but he couldn't just watch her die. Jake looked at his tools, at the station around him, and made a plan. He ran to a control panel and accessed the station's systems. His hands flew over the controls. Lights went out in the corridor where the attackers were advancing. Emergency bulkheads began to close, separating the enemy forces. Jake triggered a false hull breach warning in one section, making half the attackers retreat to seal it. Thrinna noticed the chaos in the enemy ranks. She used the moment to reposition her remaining warriors. Her eyes swept the corridor and found Jake at the control panel. Even across the distance, even through her helmet, he could see her terror. Not for herself, but for him. The leader of the attackers saw Jake too. A massive Velkari in black armor pointed at him and shouted orders. Two warriors broke from the main fight and ran toward Jake. Jake ran. He knew the station better than they did. He led them through maintenance passages, past service corridors, always staying just ahead. He triggered emergency systems behind him, closing doors, venting atmosphere in empty sections, anything to slow them down. But he made a mistake. He turned into a dead end, a storage area with no other exit. The two warriors trapped him there. They raised their weapons, and Jake knew he was about to die. Then Thrinna came through the door like a storm. She hit the first warrior so hard he flew backward into the wall. The second one tried to fight her, but Thrinna was beyond reason now. Jake had never seen rage like that. She fought with a fury that was terrifying to watch. When both attackers were down, Thrinna grabbed Jake and pushed him behind her. She stood over him, protecting him with her own body, daring anyone else to come close. Her breathing was heavy. He could hear her heart pounding even through the armor. "You should not be here," she said, her voice shaking. "You should not have come. I couldn't leave you. You are not a warrior." "No, but I couldn't just hide while you fought." More attackers came. This time, Jake and Thrinna fought together. Jake used his knowledge of the station to create advantages. He triggered steam vents to blind enemies, sealed doors to trap them, even managed to lock one group in a cargo hold. Thrina did the actual fighting, but Jake made sure she always had the upper hand. The station's security forces finally arrived, along with loyal Velkari warriors from other parts of the station. The attackers found themselves surrounded. Their leader, a scarred Velkari named Vorn, called for single combat. It was a challenge to Thrina, the old way of settling disputes. Thrina accepted. The fighting stopped as both sides watched. Vorn was huge, even bigger than Thrina. His armor was covered in marks from 100 battles. He moved toward Thrina with confidence. The fight was brutal. Vorn was skilled and strong. He hammered at Thrina's defenses, forcing her back. Jake watched in horror as her armor took damage. Cracks appeared in the plates. Warning lights flickered on her display. Then Vorn struck hard at her side, right where Jake had made that critical repair weeks ago. The component held. It should have failed under that kind of impact, but Jake's work was too good. The armor absorbed the blow and held firm. Thrina used Vorn's surprise to counterattack. She fought with everything she had, and slowly she pushed him back. The fight lasted minutes that felt like hours. Finally, Thrina found an opening and struck. Vorn fell and did not get up. The battle was over. The attackers surrendered. Thrina stood victorious, but as soon as the fighting ended, her legs gave out. Jake ran to her side as medics arrived. "Remove the helmet," one medic said. Thrina's hand shot out and grabbed Jake's wrist. "Let him," she said weakly. Jake carefully removed her helmet. Her face was pale, exhausted, but her amber eyes found his immediately. In front of everyone, human and Velkari alike, she reached up and touched his face. "You came for me," she whispered. "Of course I did. You could have died. So could you. That wasn't acceptable." A small smile crossed her face before she passed out from exhaustion. The medics took over, but Jake stayed close, refusing to leave her side. Around them, the witnesses whispered. They had seen everything. A human and a Velkari warrior, fighting together, protecting each other. Thrina had touched Jake's face in public, a gesture that meant everything in Velkari culture. Krath approached Jake as the medics worked. "You understand what she just did?" "I think so. She claimed you. In front of both our peoples. There is no going back from this." Jake looked at Thrina's unconscious form. "Good. I don't want to go back." Kareth studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You may not be Velkari human, but you have honor. You proved that today." As they carried Thrina to the medical bay, Jake followed. Whatever consequences came from this day, whatever problems it created, he didn't care. She was alive. That was all that mattered. Thrina woke up 2 days later in the medical bay. The first thing she saw was Jake, asleep in a chair beside her bed. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept or eaten properly. She reached out and touched his hand. He woke immediately. "You're awake," he said, relief flooding his face. "How long?" 2 days. "Your injuries weren't serious, but you were exhausted. The doctor said you needed rest." "You have been here the whole time?" Jake looked embarrassed. "Yeah, I wanted to make sure you were okay." Thrina squeezed his hand. "Thank you." Over the next week, the station returned to normal. The attackers were imprisoned. Vorn survived, but would spend the rest of his life in a cell. The investigation showed that he and his followers believed the Velkari were becoming weak by working with other species. They wanted to return to the old ways of isolation and constant warfare, but the investigation wasn't the only thing happening. Jake and Thrina's actions during the attack became the talk of the station. Everyone had seen them fighting together. Everyone had seen Thrina claim Jake in public. The reaction was mixed. Some humans thought it was romantic. Others worried about diplomatic complications. Among the Velkari, opinions were sharply divided. Some respected Jake for his courage. Others thought Thrina had dishonored herself by bonding with a human. Jake faced pressure from his own people. Captain Morris called him in for a meeting. "Martinez, the Admiralty is offering you a promotion. A transfer to a ship leaving next week. It's a good opportunity." Jake understood what wasn't being said. They wanted to separate him from Thrina before things got more complicated. "What if I don't want to transfer?" "Then you're choosing to make your life very difficult. Do you understand that?" "Yes, sir. But I'm not leaving her." Thrina faced her own battles. Velkari officials visited her, trying to convince her to end the relationship. They argued that her position required her to set an example. That personal feelings couldn't interfere with duty. Thrina listened in silence. Then she spoke. Jake Martinez saved my life and the lives of others during the attack. He showed courage beyond his training. He showed honor in his actions. Is this not what we value as Velkari? He is human, one official said. And that makes his honor less? That makes his courage mean nothing. Thrina stood towering over them. I will not end this bond. He has earned his place at my side. The arguments continued for days. Then something unexpected happened. The Velkari High Council sent a message. Thrina was promoted to Fleet Commander, one of the highest ranks in their military. It was recognition of her actions during the attack, but the message contained more. The Council formally recognized Jake as Thrina's bonded companion, using an ancient term that translated roughly to shield brother or armor keeper. It gave him status in Velkari society, allowed him to accompany her on missions, and granted him the right to maintain her armor officially. The decision shocked everyone. It was unprecedented. A human given such a position in Velkari culture had never happened before. But the council was clear. Jake had proven his worth through his actions. Honor demanded recognition. Jake didn't know how to feel about it. This is a huge honor, Thrina told him. The council is saying you are worthy of being Velkari, even if you are not born as one. But I'll have to train, learn your customs, probably take tests. Yes, many will test you. Some will hope you fail. This path will not be easy. Jake thought about his old life, his simple job fixing things, his quiet existence. Then he looked at Thrina and knew his choice was already made. When do we start? The next months were hard. Jake trained every day, learning Velkari customs, language, and protocols. He was tested constantly, both formally and informally. Some Velkari warriors made it clear they thought he didn't belong. They gave him impossible tasks, hoping he would give up. Jake didn't give up. When they asked him to learn combat forms, he practiced until his muscles screamed. When they tested his knowledge of Velkari history, he studied through the night. When they challenged his understanding of honor, he answered with simple honesty that sometimes impressed even his critics. Thrina watched him struggle and wanted to help, but she knew she couldn't. Jake had to prove himself on his own, but she was always there afterward, listening when he needed to talk, supporting him in private even when she had to remain distant in public. Finally, the day came for Jake's formal recognition ceremony. He stood before a gathering of Velkari warriors, wearing armor that had been specially crafted for him. The armor was unique, blending human and Velkari design elements. It was beautiful and practical, a symbol of the bridge between their peoples. The ceremony was conducted in the Velkari language. Jake understood every word now. When they asked if he would honor the traditions of the armor keepers, he answered in perfect Velkari. When they asked if he would guard Thrina's life as his own, he said yes without hesitation. Thrina stepped forward and placed her hand over his heart. In Velkari culture, this was a profound gesture, acknowledging the bond between them. You are my keeper, she said. My shield, my partner, my equal. I trust you with my life and my honor. Jake placed his hand over her heart in return. I accept this trust. I will honor it with everything I am. The gathered Velkari struck their weapons against their armor 3 times, the sound echoing like thunder. It was their way of showing approval. Not everyone in the room was happy, but they all recognized that something important had happened here. After the ceremony, Jake and Thrina stood together on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. Thrina's new command ship hung in space nearby, waiting for them. Are you afraid? She asked. Terrified, Jake admitted. This is so much bigger than I ever imagined. You could still walk away. No one would blame you. Would you want me to? No, but I want you to choose this freely. Jake reached out and adjusted a component on her shoulder armor, his touch gentle and sure. She leaned into that touch slightly, a small gesture that spoke volumes. I chose this the first day I fixed your armor, Jake said. I just didn't know it yet. When I touch your armor, I'm not just maintaining equipment. I'm caring for you. I can't imagine not doing that anymore. Then we face what comes together. Together, Jake agreed. They stood in silence, watching the stars. There would be challenges ahead, cultural misunderstandings to navigate, people who would never accept their bond, dangers that came with Thrina's position. But as Jake's fingers traced patterns on her armor, as Thrina's hand found his, they both knew they had found something rare in the vast galaxy. A connection that crossed all boundaries, a bond built on respect, trust, and the simple but profound act of caring for each other. Jake thought he was only fixing her armor. Instead, he had found his purpose, his place, and his home. Not in a location, but in the space beside her, where he would stand for whatever time they had together. And that was enough.